And we are live. Hi, I'm Todd Finley, and I am introducing Heather Wolpert-Garon, who is our EdcampECU speaker for today. And let me just tell you a little bit about Heather. First of all, she's so smart that she gives me cognitive overload headaches. And she is a middle grades teacher in California. She has a master's in Tech Geek. She's written about 10 books, many of them on PBL. She is a staff writer for Edutopia and has written for the Huffington Post. And finally, she is a visionary. So if you would just give a virtual applause for Heather Wolpert-Garon. Oh, and Garon, sorry, almost got it right. Heather Wolpert-Garon. And one last note. Please follow along on the EdcampECU hashtag. And I'm talking to the participants now. And if you would, please type in questions for Heather, and I will take a note of them, and we'll ask those questions during the last 10 minutes. So with that, Heather, you're live.
Awesome. Hi. This is so interesting because I can't see the audience, but I hope you guys have all enjoyed your lunch. I understand that you've had lovely bistro boxes today. I actually was just at an EdCamp just on Thursday, so I love this model, and I love that you guys are spending your Saturday really learning from each other, and I'm going to talk a little bit about that in a little bit. So I wanted to talk a little bit about what I'm doing this year and why that kind of applies to what you guys are doing today. This year I'm lucky. I am a teacher on special assignment, but I'm still part-time in the classroom, which I love. I'm not ready to give that up. So I'm part-time a language arts teacher, but I'm also part-time getting to kind of solve the problems of the school that have plagued us for years. And I'll get more specific in just a moment. So some of the things I'm doing is I'm helping develop curriculum for teachers so we can kind of customize and tweak for our demographic. I'm also tasked a lot of the times to meet with vendors or learn new tools and kind of pilot things to see if we think we're going to be interested in it. And basically I'm really being asked, to raise my hand and volunteer to do things, and that's kind of my task. And while I have always been the type that kind of has raised their hand, it's been almost for selfish reasons. Hey, do you want to pilot a new interactive whiteboard? I'll say, yeah, I raise my hand. Yeah, I'll do that. And that's because for a lot of reasons, one of which is you get a lot of attention for PD if you're in that first wave, and your learning curve kind of tends to get decreased. My interactive board in my classroom, by the way, is named Albus Dumbledore. My kids named it. I've been asked to pilot the one-to-one iPad program. I've been asked to then move out the iPads and now pilot Chromebooks. Our Chromebook cart, my kids also named it Cartness Everdeen. That was a good one. But I have to say this. Being innovative and being willing doesn't always come naturally. Being innovative isn't really always about just taking on that which you have strengths in, right? It's kind of about sniffing around and making sure that something isn't necessarily a fad, knowing it has some value, and then giving it a shot. So one of the things I was tasked to kind of sniff around and learn a little bit, if I was interested, was a new 3D printer. So my principal came to me and said, hey, you want to check out this 3D printer? And I was totally freaked out and totally scared, and it was way out of my wheelhouse, and I said, okay, because they've given me this release time to kind of think about these things and what this could potentially mean for our students. Okay, so I have to say this. While I love curriculum implementation and tech integration into curriculum, I have zippo interest in hardware. I've never taken an Apple product out of a box and said, ooh, it's so pretty. I don't find that interesting at all. So my principal gives me this 3D printer, and it's got gears and wires coming out of it, and he was like, oh, isn't it fascinating? And I was like, yeah, no, this really doesn't float my boat, but okay, I'm going to try it. And while I was kind of sitting there scratching my head about it, meanwhile there was this group of students gathering, because to them, this machine had been brought into the classroom that could produce anything. And I have never seen such engagement and interest with students as I have seeing them check out this 3D printer. So there's kind of a trail of thought here that kind of gets me to what I'm really going to talk about today. I started thinking about the student engagement piece, and again, I've been tasked to kind of learn how to solve certain problems for our kids. And it got me thinking about EL learners. Now, according to ASCD, and you know what, I'm going to try and get a visual up for you guys on this one, so give me a moment. According to ASCD, watch this. I'm going to get all newfangled and screen share-y. Hold on, here we go. I'm going to share that screen. Let me know if it works. Hold on. Oh, we can see Todd. Hold on. How about that? Can we see what can you see my screen? I hope.
Yes.
Okay. Okay, wonderful. Thank you so much. Okay, so according to ASCD, a long-term EL learner attended school for 7 years or more, jumped around schools throughout their school career, probably moved between the U.S. and their home country throughout that school career, seems to speak English fluently. And so they have a tendency to fly under the radar sometimes. You don't even realize that they're long-term EL learners. But they struggle in below grade level literacy in both their home language and in English. And because literacy is so vital across the subject areas, they have a greater risk of dropping out. And in fact, over 25% of the ELs will drop out of school. And these kids are everywhere. Let me kind of escape here so I can see you guys again. Okay, hold on. I am now no longer screen sharing. Did it work?
Good.
Awesome! Okay, see, out of my wheelhouse, trying something new. Okay, so these kids are everywhere. So I was doing a little research, and I guess according to the Migration Policy Institute, North Carolina EL population, the North Carolina EL population has actually gone up between 2004 and 2013 has gone up 380% in the K-12 system, and you know, and it kind of is forever growing, and so it's a population that we have to start paying attention to because it's one that we struggle with, all of us do, and so we kind of have to look to those that are trying, in my opinion, new ways to answer the question about how do we help them? Okay, so that got me thinking about their brains and what's not firing and why. And I'm thinking about their brains kind of as factories, right? So what is happening with the factory? Is it kind of like, I mean, the gears somehow, they're not going the way we need them to, and why is that? I started thinking also about standardization, because these are also the kids, because I teach middle school, who've gone through the entire school system with No Child Left Behind or Race to the Top. They've gone through with budget cuts both at the remediation and the enrichment ends, right? So then I also started thinking about their home lives, because a lot of these kids live in poverty, and we know that according to First Five California, by age 3, kids born into low-income families have heard roughly 30 million fewer words than their more affluent peers. And that kind of leaves children, a lot of the times, predestined for failure or success before they even enter kindergarten, which is, it's a frightening concept. So we've got these kids here that are capable, but between standardization and understimulation, what can we do to kind of get those factories going again? So I started thinking about something I once heard Kelly Gallagher say, and Kelly Gallagher is an author, educator, and he's the man who wrote Read Aside. If you ever have a chance to see him speak, he's really engaging and does a lot of great student samples in his speaking engagements and stuff. And he says, and I agree, engagement first, then content, then rigor. In other words, you really cannot tackle content unless you've hooked those kids in. And if you can hook those kids in an engaging way, they're going to dictate the rigor and they're going to learn the content kind of almost unbeknownst to them. And I started thinking more along those lines. So then I got to thinking about engagement, and engagement can't just be fun, right? It can't just be games, right? I use gamification in my classroom, but there needs to be purpose. There needs to be meaningfulness. What do kids care about? So this was kind of my process of thought. And that got me thinking about children and advocacy. I'm going to try this screen share one more time if you don't mind. Maybe not just one more time. We'll see. Haha, I feel like I'm getting so agile with the screen share. Let's see here. I'm now screen share. Oh, fantastic. It is working. Okay, so I started thinking about children and advocacy, and I used to do a TED Talks unit with my students, and we would study children speakers, children who have made a difference. So, for instance, we looked at Burke Bear, who did a TED Talk at 11 years old on what's wrong with our food system and sustainable farming, which was it's a lot of fun. He's a cute kid, right? And not like this hugely professional speaker. So it's really easy for kids to digest old Burke Bear. Obviously, we start talking about Malala, who was the youngest Nobel Prize winning recipient in history and stands up for education, in particular for young girls. I thought about Boyan Slat, who at 19 designed the device that was going to help us with what is now currently the largest ocean cleanup in history. This was invented by a 19-year-old. So this got me thinking that if we can somehow help students think beyond the me and find meaning in what they're doing, then they will tackle things in a much more rigorous way. Okay, hold on. Nope, going back to it, sorry. So that brought me to the Enable organization. And this is an organization that pairs people with 3D printers with children who need prosthetic devices. And enablingthefuture.org is where you would go to kind of find out more about this organization. It is always a work in progress. It is because it's run solely by volunteers, and they are working constantly with families to try and make these devices better and better and higher quality. But the point of it is, and I'll kind of hop on back for a little while. There we go. The point of it is, I started to explore and think about what would happen if we use this tool, the 3D printer, to work with the Enable organization to build prosthetic hands for children. Would that be something so meaningful that the kids would be driven to learn literacy and writing? And that's something I think is important to point out. What I was starting to envision was not a STEM-based class, because a lot of these organizations that work with the printers are science-based, STEM clubs, scouting troops with like a 5-to-1 ratio, or they're making electives, things like that, and they come at it with a teacher that has some kind of knowledge and interest in 3D printing. I was thinking I would leverage my ignorance to help model learning. So that was my goal. And as a result, I pitched a class for EL learners that leverage 3D printing to teach literacy and writing. And it's been a miracle. That's a big word. A silver bullet? No, that's a big term. It's really been amazing to watch. The class hasn't started yet, but the kids who were selected to be in the class are in my room at lunch every day now. We have started the class, but we haven't started it because they're enrolled. We've started it because they are volunteering to be in the class and learning the printers. It's really been an amazing thing. Look, we actually we built our first hand, which is actually going to go to a child. Watch this. Okay, so this is so cool. And again, this is a lot of math and science, but I'm going to talk to you a little bit about how we're using literacy and writing here. I'm just like, the kids made this. And here's the thing, they learned it and taught me, because they're finding that, oh, Miss Wolpert learns slower than we do. Like, I keep asking the same questions over and over, and they look at me with pity. Like, oh, poor Miss Wolpert. We talked about this yesterday. There's a lot of that going on. It's okay. I don't have pride. It's okay. They can think I'm an idiot. It's all right. So I pitched this class, and in a way, my principal raised his hand, and he said, done. We got to do this. We went to the CFO. The CFO, he said, well, we've never done something like this before. Okay. And he raised his hand. And that went to the assistant sup, and it went to the board. And everywhere along the chain, people were raising their hands to be a part of something that was different and out of our wheelhouse. But most importantly, we had a meeting with the parents and the kids that were selected to be in the class. I keep using that word, selected to be in the class, and the reason is because we didn't want to just dump kids into the enrollment sheet, because much like I work with my honors kids over the summer, I wanted to have that be a requirement of the class, that these EL students, many of whom have attendance issues, many of whom are struggling with a whole myriad of issues outside of school. These long-term ELs, I wanted to start working with them early as well. And after the meeting with the parents and the kids, every single family signed up to commit to those extra hours over the summer with me. And as I said, they're also in my room every day. In other words, these learners, these children who have been written off in many classes as those who don't do, they also raised their hand. It's been just an amazing experience. So we got these printers, and they've actually started naming the printers, which is crazy. I'm going to screen share again and kind of show you a little bit about what we're doing. So they started naming the printers. Oop, nope, I'm not. Hold on. Ha 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 ha. You guys are so patient, but I can't hear you. So for all I know, you're not patient, but I appreciate it.
And these are 3D printers, right?
These are 3D printers, exactly. And let's see. Let me know, Todd, if that worked. Do-do-do. And I'm just going to kind of go to the... Are we good to go? Can you see the picture? So we ended up kind of upgrading our 3D printers to the Ultimaker 2s, which actually, you know, they look far sexier than the original printer that I was tasked to learn. And the kids have started naming them. So one of the kids named, the first printer was named Gutenberg, after the guy that invented the printing press. The second one was named Prince Hamlet, P-R-I-N-T-S. Once again, always good for those puns. One of the EL students went on to Wikipedia and discovered that a gentleman named Chuck Hulls invented 3D printing, and so our third printer is named Mr. Chuckles. We've got Princess Impresora, which is the Spanish word for print. And so there's an argument right now going on for the fifth printer. There's a group of students that want to name the fifth printer Rube Goldberg, because I've been talking a lot about Rube Goldberg machines. And there's another group that is quite up at arms about the fact that there's only one female printer at the moment. And so they are pushing for the first computer scientist, I believe the one who invented coding, correct me if I'm wrong, who was a female in the 1800s. Lovelace, I think, is her last name, and they're pushing for that one. So I'm just going to show you some pictures. This is the hand happening. It's so crazy. It's so crazy, and it's hypnotic. And we've got kids. We're also using 3D printing pens, which kind of work like glue guns, except if you move slow enough, you can kind of defy gravity and they'll dry like in the air, which is with the plastic. And the kids are designing and they're building and they're making and they're writing. They're writing and writing and writing. It's crazy. So some of the ways I'm leveraging writing is this thing called an ARG wall. And an ARG wall celebrates failure, because you have to celebrate failure when, not only when you're 3D printing, but when you're writing. You know, things go wrong all the time. Things need to be reworked and tweaked and tinkered with all the time. And this concept of tinkering that you do with 3D printing has become a metaphor for how we learn writing. So I've allowed them to do these constructed response paragraphs. And normally a constructed response paragraph, you know, as many of you know, might be main topic sentence, evidence, commentary, conclusion, right? It's kind of that really dry structure, informational writing, blah, blah, blah. I'm letting them use voice because to not let them use voice would be a travesty because they're so frustrated when things go wrong. And their conclusion, I've kind of given them a scaffold for the conclusion, which is, what are your next steps? So they research from discussion threads and YouTube videos and informational articles, and they dive in and they research next steps. And so their frustration has to lead to something. They can't just vent for the sake of venting. I mean, don't you feel that way sometimes even about yourself or your colleagues, not just the students? You know, okay, you can vent to me, but now what? And that's kind of the purpose of the writing. And the 3D printing is what's inspiring them to want to write. It's a miracle. Okay. Anyway, so we got that. Again, writing is making. It may not be the tangible thing that is they can hold in their hand, but I'm trying to get them to see it that way. We talk a lot about Rube Goldberg because a lot of times with these students and with their struggles, they have a struggle sequencing from point A to B to C to D. And so what we're going to be doing in the summer are building Rube Goldberg machines, something simple like pop the balloon in 10 steps, something like that. And they're going to have to design one of the steps has to be 3D printed. And then what they're going to have to do is each kid in the small group will have to verbalize the step that they were in charge of, and they'll create, in a sense, a jigsaw paragraph describing the sequence of the 10 steps to pop the balloon. Again, trying to get something abstract like writing and getting it into something more concrete, because these students sometimes think very concretely, and we want to kind of crumble that off to get to the more abstract thought. So here's what I'm going to kind of say here, because I want to wrap it up, because I want to be able to take some questions and also talk to those of you that are in the room, because I know that I bet I've got a lot to learn from you as well. You're sitting here at this EdCamp, and an EdCamp is really all about going into a room or sitting at a table. Sometimes they ask you, what are your strengths? Can you be a ringer for that room? Can you share your knowledge in that location? But if I could also challenge you to get your feet to walk in the direction of a room or a table that really leverages your ignorance. Raise your hand, go out of your wheelhouse, use this great model to just learn and absorb and model that for your students. What a great way to spend your Saturday, and I really appreciate spending it with you guys.
Thank you, Heather. So there's a question on Twitter. Can you hear me okay?
I can. Mm-hmm.
Okay, this is from Bashan Daniels.
Mm-hmm.
And it says, what are key ways to help the English language learner students in the classroom when you are not getting the outside support?
What a great question. Okay. Are we talking, I mean, obviously there's lots of strategies out there for teaching writing, right? We all hear about the scaffolds and the fill in the blanks and the sentence stems and things like that. But I would say you don't need 3D printers to be engaging, right? So if you're looking to think about the concreteness of making, let's say, in your class, pick up wiki sticks, pick up pipe cleaners, pick up clay, and have them start to describe sequentially what they're doing with their hands, because so much hands-on learning went away with standardization. So I would really just start to leverage different modalities, because these kids are going to all wake up when you mix and match how you're delivering information and how you're able to get information from them. I hope that answers your question.
I think it's a great answer. Let me ask another question. We have about 5 minutes left. This is from Melissa Tedder. How does Heather find ways to pay for the equipment she uses?
Okay, that's a great question. I'm gonna say this. You start by asking your principal. A lot of people don't even use the channels that exist. You say, and you don't keep it amorphous. Come in with a plan. Because if you shoot high, sometimes, here, I'll try and get it so you can see my hand. If you shoot high, sometimes you'll get this, and they'll think they've kind of like given you, they're like, oh, well, I'm going to compromise, and then you're like, score, I got a printer, So you can just start with the channels first that exist. Have a plan set up so that you're not asking people to dream with you. You're coming with that done. You got to do some of that legwork. From there, there's Donors Choose. From there, there's your local Elks Club. From there, there's your own network. If you've got a social network, an online network, sometimes you can even find donations and stuff coming in from there. A lot of people don't think, let's say they're making a makerspace, which is the new buzz right now. They don't even think to go to their local Home Depot and talk to the manager and say, I need wood, do you have scraps? Chances are they're looking for ways to say yes. You also have to think to yourself that for some organizations, there's actual funding if they can prove they've helped schools. So if, like, for instance, you want to bring in outside speakers, I know we're set for time, we're lost on time. Forgive me, I'm going to talk fast. Like, for instance, you want to bring in an outside speaker, talk to a local lab or observatory or museum or theater company. They have funding to help experts talk to schools, and sometimes they just don't know how to reach out to schools. But they've got liaisons that just are kind of, what do we do? Make that easy for them and reach out.
That's a fantastic answer. I have a question. I'm wondering how working with these new technologies are changing how you think of failure.
Well, I mean, I always kind of leveraged I don't know, right? I always kind of was perfectly happy to admit when I didn't know something, or I could say, Google that, because that's all I would do, right? So anything I would do and they could do, I always put it on them. But now, the grit that I feel I've had to have to get through learning these printers, because it's a pain, let me tell you, it is not easy. The grit that it's taken me is nothing compared to the grit it's taking them, and yet my students are willing to continue plugging away at it and emailing and working hard. I would be a fool if I didn't take advantage of that and model being frustrated and still sticking with it myself.
Okay, I'm going to ask one more question of you, but before that, where can people reach you on Twitter if they really want to interact with an EDU celebrity?
Oh, Todd. What, Todd? Twitter, I am Tween Teacher. That is my Twitter handle.
And your website is?
My website is tweenteacher.com.
And when can we expect the podcasts? Are they available now?
No, they're not available now. I am neglecting the podcast, but soon, so soon, Todd Finley. Okay.
So our last question, and I'd like you to answer it and then wave goodbye with the hand, please.
Oh, yes, of course.
So I know that you travel a lot to different conferences, you're always presenting, and going to tech-related things as well. I'm wondering if there's a technology that you sort of see that's out there that's next for you, or something that you really feel like it'd be worth your time to investigate.
Well, this 3D printing, Todd. Are you not satisfied with the 3D printing? It's so hard, and it's taken forever. I think I'm going to probably be sitting in this sweet spot for a little bit until I feel I've really nailed it. But the point is to always morph and be willing to morph and be willing to raise your hand no matter what comes down the line, right? Like when they approach me years from now and they say, "Here's a new hologram machine. Do you want to try it?" I mean, I'll try it. We'll see what happens, But I think a real 21st century mentality isn't about the tool, it's about the flexibility and just the willingness to give it a shot and to dream. I tried the drone, I crashed it, and they never replaced it. So Yeah, I dreamt for a while about that drone and what we could do with it, but that tool will never be given to me again. So 3D printers. All right, I'm gonna wave goodbye. Goodbye, North Carolina.
Thank you so
See
much,
you
Heather.
later.
We really appreciate it.
Take care, everybody. Enjoy the rest of your ed camp.
Okay, bye-bye.
Thanks, Heather. I appreciate you coming here. So have a good day. I'm going to go ahead and give some updates for EdCamp here.
Bye-bye.
Share my screen. Bye. Thank you. Seeing this great. Now you get to see me on a live screen here. Present to everybody. Technology at its best. Okay, so we've got our session 3 here. So we've got our topics, how to make PD better in room 103. Nobody stepped up to help that, but please just go in there. Maybe you can find a leader when you get there. Nearpods, tips, and tricks. Excuse me, I know there's some people there that are experts out there, so maybe 1 or 2 will show up there to help you there. Excuse me, Miss Tedder is there going to help us out with Weebly websites. And then we've got formative assessment. I don't think Todd knows it, but he's been volunteered to teach it. So hopefully he'll be there, and that'll be in room 211. Project-based learning, Keeley, and then using technology to improve literacy skills. So please head to your room right there and pick out you one. And like I said, there might be somebody that'll come along and be the expert and do that room. So, yep, there's Holly typing in. If there's no set, pick them. So, actually, Holly, I think I'll go to that one. But we'll go ahead and see. So come on, people, jump into your rooms. You still got a little bit of time. The next session will start at 12:40. So you've got a good bit of time to, you need to go to the restroom, talk amongst each other, and pick out your leaders. And you can always update the live agenda. All right, I hope you enjoyed our broadcast.